Thanks, Mark. That was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview. I'm joined this evening by political journalist Theo Usherwood and the I columnist Yasmin Alibi-Brown. Among the stories, we will be discussing this on the front page of The Observer. Their headline, "Things can only get worse. Starmer warns working people." We'll be right back. It's not the only paper.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
Are you still the kingmaker of this Republican Party?
I've interviewed some of America's most recognisable politicians and celebrities too.
You're watching Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. But first, our top stories. And police have made a second arrest after 3 people were killed in a knife attack at a festival in Germany. Islamic State has claimed responsibility. In Italy, the authorities there have launched a manslaughter investigation over the deaths of 7 people in the sunken superyacht Bayesian. And NASA has confirmed that 2 astronauts who were meant to be on the International Space Station for just over a week will now be there for just over 8 months. Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with political journalist Theo Usherwood and the I columnist Yasmin Alabai-Brown. So let's see what is on some of those front pages. And the Observer leads with Keir Starmer warning working people this week they face even worse economic and social pressure in the coming months as Labour takes unpopular decisions to rebuild the economy. That warning from the Prime Minister, expected in a speech on Tuesday, is also the top story in The Telegraph. The Express, meanwhile, says a former Home Office minister has accused Labour of rushing ahead with the early release of prisoners to free up jail space, but ignoring the potential risks to the public. The Sunday Times reports Labour donor Lord Ali, who led the party's general election fundraising, has been given a pass to Downing Street, something normally reserved for employed political advisers or civil servants. The Sun has another exclusive interview with TV pundit Jenas about his sacking by the BBC for sending inappropriate messages to female colleagues. The Mail on Sunday hears from an angry TV presenter Kirsty Allsop after she was questioned by social services for letting her 15-year-old son go interrailing with a friend across Europe. In The People, it features the parents of murdered teenager Leah Croucher, killed in 2019 by a convicted sex offender. They're campaigning to have sexual predators taken off the streets in order to protect other young women. The Mirror speaks to a friend of former England coach Sven-Göran Eriksson, who says his terminal cancer has left him too ill to walk even to his favourite place. And The Star reports that famous British psychic Sally Morgan was invited on a date by a man while they were both attending her husband's funeral. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us. And we are joined this evening by political journalist Theo Usherwood and the I columnist Yasmin Alabai-Brown. It's good to see you both. Plenty to chew over this evening, but let's start, Theo, with the Sunday Express and ISIS, whatever they're called these days, claiming its soldier, their words, murdered 3 at that festival in Germany.
Yes, I mean, terrible events in Germany. Matt, 3 people killed, 2 men aged 67 and 56, and a woman 56 years old, as well as 8 people hurt. And of course, you're just reporting there, you're hearing that a second arrest has been made. No indication yet as to whether that is the suspect. Of course, there was a manhunt launched immediately afterwards because although one 15-year-old had been arrested, there wasn't a clear indication they'd been talking about it, and therefore they weren't arrested as a suspect, but arrested just to find out what they potentially knew about the attack before it took place. I really, you know, when you look at something like this, you just really worry about how it could be used by those on the far right to stir up hatred. To look at this and say, well, here's the justification. This is why this will be jumped on by those on the far right to say, well, there's some justification to our cause, and that's concerning. And nobody, there's ISIS is a terrorist organisation. This is plainly being treated as a terrorist attack, as it should be. And the police and authorities should be able to do their work and bring the perpetrator, whoever it might be, to justice. But I do, it is concerning, I think, that potentially the way, this could play out. We've seen the rise of the riots in Germany, particularly, but also in this country and across Europe as well.
You know what, Yasmin, I saw on social media earlier people saying, what did this person look like? Now, were they asking to do a public service so people keep an eye out if they are still at large? Or were they up to no good in asking that question?
No, and as Theo says, the whole riots thing and how it was instigated. And look, I'm a Muslim, and I could not hate ISIS more than I do, because actually they've hurt and damaged and killed more Muslims than anybody else that they've targeted. So I have no concern about defending them or understanding them or anything, but Theo's absolutely right. How we, deal with these crimes. Are we saying it's all right? We've had several cases of stabbings recently across Europe, actually here and in Europe. the ethnicity didn't matter, the murders mattered. Are we saying that certain people committing murders are just illogically worse than others committing murders? If it is ISIS, then I hope they're found, and they are going to be active. I've always said, because of the legitimate concerns over Palestine, they will be here everywhere, and I think our security services are doing a good job. But I so agree with Thea that there are responsibilities for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And just because, by the way, Islamic State take responsibility doesn't mean that is truly the case. Who knows
sometimes
what to
they
believe.
show off.
Sometimes they show off, sometimes they take responsibility for something that actually was nothing to do with them. Let's move on to tomorrow's Observer front page. Yasmin, things can only get worse, Starmer warns working people before they get better. And it's not the only paper that is running this, as we will hear. Is this Keir Starmer being upfront and honest, or is this rolling the pitch for something that's coming down the line?
I must say, I find this really very troubling. Of course, it's, quite important that he and Rachel Reeves and all of them don't make fake and false promises, which then crash, and then we lose faith in them and then faith in the democratic process. But it does seem to me that there are choices politicians can always make. When you've made a choice that you're not going to increase taxes for those who are best able to pay those taxes, including myself, then you've made a decision which then will be paid for by other people. So I am actually quite angry that they're warning working people, which is a kind of, euphemism.
It's a pretty broad group, isn't it?
Not working people earning £900,000 a year, but working people maybe doing 3 to 4 jobs to keep going. And they've refused to consider the lift on child, the embargo on the third child benefit.
Cap,
What they're saying is, we will carry on, you must carry on suffering for a greater good, when we, Labour, aren't prepared to make those who can afford it pay a bit more. Why did we vote them in? Sorry.
Those people who voted for them.
I voted for them.
There you go.
Yes.
OK, well, you can say
No,
that.
and they won the election.
Comment.
We, meaning who? The voters.
Yeah, the voters, the majority, of course. And Theo, as I mentioned there, this is in the Telegraph as well. As you expect, they take a slightly different tack to the Observer on this, but it's interesting that both papers have this story. They're focusing on, well, potential U-turns. And just to pick up on what Yasmin was saying there, Labour were very careful before the election to say they're not going to raise those main taxes of income tax, VAT and national insurance. But what do you think? Is this rolling the pitch for something else?
There is a bit of wriggle room on this, because we had Darren Jones, the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, coming out in the middle of the week, and he was saying that that Labour weren't going to raise employees' national insurance contributions, which of course leaves open the door to increasing national insurance contributions from employers. Of course, when you include VAT, National Insurance Corporation Tax, you're talking about 75% of the tax take. So when you say, OK, well, Labour say, well, we're going to go and look at things like capital gains tax, that's actually that's quite a small proportion of tax. And we could expect capital gains tax, I think, probably is going to go up. And Labour, of course, have the option of trying to create new taxes. But if it wants to raise serious amounts of revenue quickly, it is going to have to try and find a way of going back on that promise in order to raise the money. I think I think the danger is with these warnings is that, Keir Starmer promised to change the country, promised to come in and, fix everything. And I think most people will most people will give him some wriggle room and say, allowances, and say, OK, it's going to take some time.
Yes.
We've seen chronic underinvestment in public services, notably with the prisons. I think that's come to the fore in recent weeks. But I think people, if you're going to spend, let's say, particularly around public sector pay, if you're going to spend £10 billion, it could even go even higher. I think people are going to want to see public services improve. And I think people would accept an increase in taxes in Rachel Reeves' autumn budget. But I think there's going to be a huge amount of frustration amongst voters if taxes go up, but they don't see a material difference in the offering. So when they go to A&E, are people still waiting 18 hours to get seen by a nurse or a doctor? When people try to get into work on the trains, are there still strikes? And I think, if Labour can, with these public sector pay deals, actually make, get things working again, fix the country, then I think Keir Starmer will actually be able to buy himself a bit more time. I think the problems are going to come when people don't see things get better, but they do see increases to tax.
And in terms of seeing public services work, Yasmin, if people are victims of crime, they want to see people punished according to the rules. But actually, the Sunday Express front page has the public at risk over prison release plan. Let's just set the context of this. The government is bringing in that plan to cut prison terms from 50% to 40% for those served, to free up some space in prisons, men's prisons in particular. But the Sunday Express reports that this could be putting the public at risk somehow.
Well, I think, I have no words to sometimes express what the Express does. But, look, 14 years, everybody knows the Tories did nothing, to improve the prisons. Wandsworth is the most squalid prison since the Victorian age, OK? They had 14 years, they did nothing. And now we're getting this paper kind of outraged that after the riots, there's going to be many more people going into prison. Some of them aren't going to be able to be sent in. Some people are not a threat to society, and they've been banged up for far too long. So I think there is a sensible way of doing this. But really, here I am with Keir Starmer when he said that the biggest scandal was that nothing was done about making our prison system work.
But a lot of people hope that if they're cutting the sentence served from 50 to 40%, that they've put in the necessary checks and balances, that the right people are going to benefit from that cut in their term. Thanks both very much indeed for the time being. Coming up, The Sun has another exclusive interview with TV pundit Jenas following his sacking by the BBC for sending inappropriate messages, as he's admitted, to female colleagues.
I think the big thing about Hoddit was that he not only was he the first, he was incredibly determined. He had a lot of obstacles that he had to overcome in order to fly with the RFC, and he never gave up on that. So he was a very, very determined character, very likable, had lots of friends, particularly amongst sort of high society. He went to Oxford, he was at Balliol College, so yeah, it was his determination to succeed and to prove to his family back in India that he could make something of himself and to sort of overcome all the obstacles in his way in the UK that make him so special. He was in a situation where, because he was not British and not British born, he wasn't allowed to join the British Royal Flying Corps in Britain, and he had to overcome that. And he actually overcame that by threatening to join the French Air Force. He was with the French Red Cross for a while before he started his basic training.
And how far did he take it? What sort of planes did he fly?
The planes, I mean, the famous one is the Sopwith Camel, which was a fantastic plane when it was up in the air, but it was actually very, very difficult to control and very difficult to land. And quite a few pilots died whilst training in the Sopwith Camel. But he was again, determined to succeed. He didn't let the sort of dangers of it stop him. He saw it as, once he started doing it, he saw it as his duty to make sure he, became the best that he could be in terms of piloting. I used his autobiography as a large part of my research, and once he was in the air, once he was part of the Corps, he didn't seem to have very many obstacles at all. People took to him very, very quickly. He, as I said, he was a very sociable character, so very friendly, and he had lots and lots of contacts. He made friends with people very easily. It was more beforehand, it was the fact that he wore a turban. So at his basic training in Aldershot, the sergeant major in his first couple of days objected to his turban, and then he had to have a special helmet made, which was made by a hatter, I believe, in Piccadilly Gardens, that he could fit over the top of his turban while he was flying. And it meant that when he got to Biggin Hill eventually, they described him as the flying hobgoblin. That was his nickname.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me now. Political journalist Theo Usherwood and the I columnist Yasmin Alibi-Brown. Let's get back to the front pages, Theo. Sunday Times. They report that a pass has been given to a Labour donor, pass for Downing Street, that is, to a Labour donor who gave the party £500,000. This is Lord Wahid Ali.
Yes, so this is, it's a very good story, this from on the front page of the Sunday Times. When you have a pass to Downing Street, you need, they're strictly controlled. And the idea is that you're either in there as a political advisor, a SPAD, or you're in there as a civil servant.
Yeah.
But it's very rare for an individual just to get a pass, so they can come and go as they please. It's usually just reserved for very close family. And that's perfectly normal because, of course, the Prime Minister's flat is above number 11 Downing Street. So I think this is going to be a very difficult question for Keir Starmer and number 10 to answer. Why does Lord Ali have this pass and access, unprecedented, unrestricted access in number 10? Because, they've gone through, the Sunday Times have gone through the close relationship between Lord Ali and Keir Starmer. He gave the Prime Minister £16,200 worth of work clothing, thought to his suit, multiple pairs of glasses worth £2,485 and £36,500 for his private office and accommodation costs during the election. Now, the retort from Labour will be, well, the Tories did the same. But the point is that Labour promised to be different from the Conservatives. They promised to clean up, fix politics, that it wasn't going to be the way that Boris Johnson, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak ran the operation within number 10, that politics was going to be cleaner and it was going to be more transparent. But of course, because Lord Ali isn't a political advisor and he's not on the civil service payroll, we knew nothing of this until the Sunday Times revealed it. And Keir Starmer said on the steps of Downing Street as he went in, country first, party second. So what's Lord Ali doing for the country?
Do you know what? I'm getting a sense politically the summer is starting to finish, isn't it? We're getting back to the normal Westminster stuff. By the way, I just have to say on the front page of the Sunday Times, Oasis reunited. As a child of Britpop, I really hope that's true. Anyway, let's move on to the Sun, Yasmin. They continue ploughing the furrow of Jermaine Jenas' sacking, but the headline tomorrow is shocking.
He says, it's a coup for the Sun on Sunday. He says he was stopped from apologising. I didn't realise until now that he's admitted sending inappropriate messages to, I think, 2 women. He wanted to apologise and the BBC didn't let him. Now, I actually think the BBC was right on this one, because I think once women feel the way they feel when these sorts of things happen, they don't want to hear from the bloke, and let's face it, 99% of the time it's a bloke doing this to females. That's the last thing they want. But what it's the kind of BBC bashing is happening here. But he said, now he says, I want to take this opportunity to say sorry. I made a huge error of judgment. And I'm glad he said that, but I don't think he had the right, actually, to approach women he had been sending inappropriate messages to after they had reported him.
Yes, like you say, he's admitted wrongdoing, and once he does that, it's kind of up to them to decide what to do with him, right? He may not like it, but the wrongdoing has been done. Let's just finish off. I want to move on to the Mail, actually, Mail on Sunday. This is around Kirsty Allsop. Her fury as social services probe her son's Interrail trip, Theo. Let's just remind people what happened here. Her son is 15,
yes,
but was apparently interrailing around Europe with a 16-year-old friend. And
this was an admission from Kirsty Allsop. I think she was very upfront about it, and it provoked conversation, didn't it, during the summer about what you'll allow your children to do. Is this a sort of rite of passage, actually giving them the opportunity to spread their wings and to travel around Europe and to see it as, as a way to see the world and grow up, and or actually is 15 just too young? And Kirsty Allsop, I think, after this was revealed about her youngest child, Oscar, was approached by a social worker at Kensington and Chelsea Borough Council, the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea, to ask her what safeguards have been put in place. Now, we looked it up before we came on air. There are no particular rules around what Kirsty Allsop has allowed her. There's nothing prohibiting her from doing what she's done. And actually, some countries take different approaches to it. So if you try getting to Portugal and you're 15 years old and you're not there with a parent, I understand actually it's you could be stopped by the police and detained by the police, whereas other countries take a more laissez-faire attitude. But I think in defence of the council, if they think that there is a safeguarding problem or something that they want to take up, I think they're perfectly entitled to do so. And I don't think it should matter what background you come from. Look, I make no judgment. Let's not do, I make no judgment about Kirsty Allsop's decision. That's everybody can have that debate. But actually, in fairness to the council, if the council think somebody at social services puts their hand up and says, "Hang on a moment, we've had a concern about this," I think they are perfectly entitled to actually investigate that. In fact, they should investigate that, and it shouldn't matter who the individual is about whether they should be deterred from doing so.
Exactly, and I think the class thing really matters. If this was a mum from a council estate, and I think there are issues, and I'm sorry, I am critical of Kirsty Allsop because I think, just as Theo said, we don't know the rules and the laws and what happens across the different countries they would be travelling, what could happen.
Yes.
So it's perfectly right for the council to do some searching questioning.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much indeed. Coming on next, Sky News at 11.